Hey everyone, welcome back to The Mom's View. I'm Colette, this is Carly and Kaylee. And if you didn't see last week's episode, we had our friend Dana on to talk about her fitness and health experience with being vegan. So go watch that if you haven't seen it. But today, we're gonna talk about our favorite podcasts. I love podcasts. I've been into them, ever since Shay and I started doing our own podcasts. I love podcasts. So I just thought it would be fun if we talked about what we're listening to now, maybe give some ideas of why we're listening to them and see what you guys like.
I always think people are interested in hearing what other podcasts everyone is listening to.
Helps you get good ideas, because it's like sometimes I feel like those are my favorite things is something that someone referred me to, you know?
All of mine are except for one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The murder one?
Yeah. Well, the murder one was a suggestion from someone I follow on Instagram. But I haven't always really been into podcasts. Like, it didn't really interest me. I don't know why, because I love them. So it's kind of like new to me. So I'm excited to share.
Yes. I started, I think I liked audiobooks first. And then I really was like, oh yeah, podcasts. They're fun to listen to too. And I love to listen to them in the car because I'm in the car a lot. But I also am very into not self-help, but things that I can actually use. Self-awareness. Yeah, I'm not really big into
self-building, self-improvement,
right.
Self-health.
It's interesting because you can learn so much from people. Someone can say something and you're like, oh yeah, I felt that way too. Yes, I'm putting, and then you actively put that into play.
Okay, so do you guys want to start? What's your favorite?
You go first. It's your episode.
Well, I was thinking, I've listened to a lot. I used to like Rhett and Link's, and it's Ear Biscuits. And I feel so stupid once because I was at VidCon and I saw, I think it was Rhett. No, it was Link. And I was like, hey, I love your new podcast, The Earbuds. He's like, you mean Ear Biscuits? And I was like, yeah. Because I listen to it all the time and I should know that. When you just feel so stupid and they're cool and we're friends now, but it just felt like
Don't worry.
Stupid.
At Playlist, I interviewed Tom Green and I called him Tony Green.
Oh, because you knew a Tony Green.
Yeah. And he's just like the coolest guy ever, Tom Green. Here I am. I think he was nervous. I was like, so Tony? He's like, Tom. I was like, damn it. I knew that.
That's so embarrassing. I did that with Bethany Moda too. When I was like, I met her at a party once. I'm like, oh, so you do YouTube? And she's like, yeah. And we were kind of talking, and she was so humble and cool. And later I go home and I look her up, and she had 6 million subscribers at the time. And I was like, oh, open mouth, insert foot.
It's impossible to know everyone.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Anyways, so what I'm listening to lately is if you guys know who Michael Buckley is, he is a YouTuber. He's amazing. He's been around since the beginning. And he suggested to me that I listen to the Life Coach podcast by Brooke Castillo.
Because he's life coaching now.
Yes, he's life coaching. And just going through life stuff, he thought this would be a good podcast for me. So I started listening and I love it.
I love life coachy stuff. That's my favorite.
And it's interesting because I feel like it's stuff that I thought that I knew, but then there's always a different twist on it, like a different, she was talking about I can't even remember now. There was one episode she was talking about emotions and about depression and how depression isn't really like a sadness, it's like an emptiness. And I related to it so much and I was like, that is so true. It's not, you can't even explain, it's a deep sadness, it's just like emptiness.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting. The last one that I listened to of hers, she talked about thinking big, and how she said you're not going to. Okay, this is not quote because I don't remember exactly what she said. But
through my life with everything I try to quote. This one guy said this one thing.
Basically, it's not going to happen if you don't think it. Think big and reach for it. And she talks about goals and how sometimes we're good at setting short-term goals, but that can create anxiety in us and this stress about how it's going to happen and all this stuff. And she says, I'll set a goal for a 10-year goal. She wants to make $100 million, and that's a 10-year goal for her. And I'm like,
girl.
that's huge. You think about $100 million, there's no way. But she thinks it. and she thinks big and she gives herself a big time frame. And I feel like just the act of setting that goal, it creates this momentum inside of you. She said, you're not going to believe it. I mean, you won't believe big things will happen until you believe big things will happen. Like,
Yeah. It's just, it's like putting it out in the universe. Why not?
yes. And she talks about thinking big and how much it can change your life. And I loved it. I listened to it twice in a row because I knew I was like, I need this right now.
Yeah.
So that's one of mine that I've been listening to. There's a few more, but
Yeah.
how about you guys?
You go.
Okay. I'm also a podcast bouncer or rounder. Like some days I'm like, oh, I need to hear this. Some days I need to hear different things, which is so great about podcasts. Someone else who I think always dares you to dream big is Rachel Hollis.
Love her.
Love her. So she has one that is Rise, and it's her. And then she has one that's Rise Together, her and her husband.
I love that one.
And I really, really love both of them, and you can get different things from each one. So, and that, I feel like she's the same. She has a way with saying things that it's like, oh, you are brilliant. And I love you. And something that I also really love about her podcast is her voice. I feel like out of anyone, any book I listen to, her voice is such a comfort to me. I don't know what it is. It feels like I've been friends with her forever. And I love her. I love her books too.
Maybe you guys are gonna meet and be best friends.
Maybe. Oh, you're my
Like
best
you can
friend.
feel it. I was like, no,
No, you're mine.
coming for you, Rachel. This one's like out of left field, but it's because of my husband. But Joe Rogan.
You listen to Joe Rogan?
Yes. Well, not when the kids are around. He's
Right.
highly inappropriate. But he actually is a very, very smart guy. Like he's really smart, and he has a way of saying things that can cause offense, but it's always the opposing side, and I think it's good to think that way. Like you always, I try to feel like I'm always thinking of others and what they would think, and that can be a bad thing, but I've learned that that's actually a good thing, so that you're kind of like looking at both sides of a situation, and I love how he does that naturally.
Right.
And he has a lot of really smart people on his podcast, like the one that's like kind of trending right now is the one with Elon Musk, which Elon Musk is brilliant. They did smoke a lot of weed on that episode, and it was kind of weird
You're like, this
Yeah.
is weird.
for productivity. But he's kind of like a fun, lighthearted one that is fun to listen to. And then I really love Jody Moore. She's like complete opposite end of the spectrum. She's very religious, God-fearing woman, but I love her podcast. And they're all like 20 to 29 minutes. Sometimes I feel like if podcasts are so long, my ADHD is all over the place, and I'm like, wait, what were they saying last time I was listening to this? And I know I can commit to 20 minutes. You know what I'm saying? So I love that hers are just like short, and they always leave me thinking in like 10 different directions. And I love that. I love that so much. So I
love her
really like
insight on
hers.
things.
Yeah. She's the good one. I like her.
I feel like she's had a lot that have stuck with me as a mom.
Really?
The one there's one that's talking about parenting right now that I've listened to just over and over, because I'm like, I need to hear this, I need to hear this, I need to hear this. So she's a good one. I love her.
That's interesting because that's one of the other podcasts I listen to. Not smoking weed, but it's called the Next Step podcast. It's about addiction recovery, actually, and it's primarily it's done by members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So there is a lot of church insight, but it's the best podcast that talks about 12-step recovery to me, and they're so in depth. Like they have addicts come on and interview, and they interview wives of addicts, they interview, any addiction, like food addiction, porn addiction, drugs, alcohol. Like they get really deep, and it is long form. It's like hour and a half a lot of the time, but I treat it like a book. Like I'll start an episode and then I'll listen to it more later and listen more later. But it has given me so much insight into that, because I'm currently working a 12-step program, and so for me it's really helpful. And so I would suggest that to anybody that is either an addict yourself, or you love somebody that's an addict, or you know people that you're close to and you just want to learn more. Like it is so helpful.
Yeah.
So that's one that I've really been listening to.
I don't think it could hurt for anyone to listen to that.
Right, just to have more understanding.
Yeah, and throughout your life, it's inevitable you're going to meet, or someone like that is going to cross your path, and so even if it just helps you to have more empathy towards that person, or just to like realize where they're coming from, or like that it is an addiction, or that exists in the world, I think could help,
Right. And it's done by two guys that are both recovered addicts. Like I can't remember, alcohol and opiates, and and others, I can't remember what the other guy was addicted to, but they both are recovered addicts. So it's interesting to hear from their insight being in recovery. Right. And I don't know if you guys know who Mint Arrow is.
Oh yeah, Corinne.
She's also on that podcast. She talks about her journey and her husband and hers journey with his addictions. So it's been really insightful to me. So I would suggest that one. It's interesting too because sometimes I get annoyed because there's like Jay and Brad are the two that do it, and there was one time where one of them was chewing gum the whole time, and I was like, somebody needs to tell them.
You guys watch our moms do. Don't chew gum.
But it's kind of what I like about it is they're just really, this is what we're doing. It's really chill, super laid back, and a lot of information. So that's one that I've been really into lately.
I think podcasts are like something they're, for me, undervalued. Like I love music and I always catch myself listening to music, but I'm like, I make that excuse that it's just hard for me to sit down and commit to reading a book because I feel like there's just so much I could always be doing. And sometimes I don't get joy with just sitting and reading because I feel that like, you feel the itch, like I should be doing something else. And I know for a lot of people that's therapy, just to sit down and read. And I actually probably could benefit from just sitting and not doing something. But for me, I'm like, our life is so short and like we're only here for such a short amount of time. I need to be growing and learning. And podcasts are such a blessing for that. You can be driving to pick up your kids and listening to them or like walking on the treadmill or something and just learning. So if you guys have more suggestions, I need to up my podcast game.
Yeah, I have another one that I love, and it's from Dana K. White. She wrote a book called Decluttering at the Speed of Life that has changed everything for me. I mean, I still have a long way to go, don't get me wrong, but she has taught me things to help me become more organized, to get rid of things. And I started the book like a year ago, and I've just listened to it over and over again, kind of at different times. And I was like, she has to have a podcast. And I've started listening to that as well. It's called A Slob Comes Clean.
That's cute.
And that's what I really love about her is that she's so relatable, just real. She's not like, this is what you have to do, and you have to do it this way. She's like, she gives you options, and she's understanding because she kind of giggles about this, but she's like, she didn't mean to become like this organizing coach or like, she just shares what works for her. And she's gone through different stages of her life where she had more hoarding tendencies or different things like that. So she's very, very relatable and has come out on the other side.
Nice.
And then she, in her podcast, she also goes over different situations. She even talked about if you have like chronic pain or illness, what you can do to still be organizing, because when you don't feel good, you don't want to like do that. And she was even sick one day, and she was like, this is what I learned from when I was sick. This is how I can keep doing it. Or like during the holidays, this is what I can do before the holidays come around. So she has tons of great advice. And I also really like her voice.
That makes a big difference.
It does. I can't listen to someone if I like find their voice off-putting.
Yeah. I do. Yeah.
And I feel bad, and I think like voices sound different to other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes it easier to listen to.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense. It's a big deal.
Yeah. And then I, of course, have my murder podcast that I love so much. And I feel kind of like crazy, but it's also made me feel less crazy because so many people love it. And it's called My Favorite Murder. And it's two women, and they just talk about, they take turns and they talk about a murder. And just kind of go through the story. And tell about the events that happened, but they're hilarious. And
That's so interesting. Like, what an oxymoron. Or
yeah, they're really funny, but you learn so much. I get scared when I can't listen to it when Casey's not home.
Really?
Because I still get like scared. Yeah, but I just feel like it's so interesting to me, and it's a way for me to not think about all of these other things. Sometimes I want to listen to someone helping me dream big. Sometimes I want to listen to how I can clean my house, and sometimes I don't want to think about anything. So,
and sometimes we just put the music in.
and welcome to the world of podcasts.
Yeah.
All the things you can listen to.
Yeah. Well, that was fun. I already have like
know.
a list,
I'm-
another list. Of like,
Oh,
okay,
also
good.
warning. That podcast says the F word a lot.
I love
Okay.
the F word. It's my freaking
Like a
favorite
lot, a lot.
word.
Fun. I love that word too.
I love fun.
Just a disclaimer.
Okay, well, that's good to know. It is good
It
to know.
is.
We've talked about every kind of podcast: smoking weed, religious, mothering, murdering.
I mean, honestly, I was kind of surprised because someone suggested it that I follow on Instagram, and she's really religious. And so when I started talking about it, or listening to it, I was like, this can't be the podcast she's talking. And then she said later, like, there's some like raunchy language. I'm like, oh yeah, there is a lot.
Yeah. And sometimes that's okay. Yeah. All right. Well, that is our podcast list that we have this time. Let us know in the comments below what other podcasts you guys have seen or are interested in so that we can up our podcast game as well. All right. Thank you guys. Stay tuned for our next week's episode. And of course, don't forget our feature, Mom on Friday. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.